If you had an opportunity to tell Nelson Mandela, our former president, about the crime and unemployment that is going on in our country, what would you tell him? What would you tell somebody like Nelson Mandela about the nonsense that we're experiencing and witnessing in our country now with the corruption and the crime? What would you tell Nelson Mandela about how half of the youth we have in the country are unemployed because he has left in charge a bunch of idiots that have destroyed our economy and are busy destroying our country and taking it down to a bottomless pit when it comes to crime and unemployment? What would you tell Nelson Mandela about the corruption of the ANC people that have taken over this country, and they are literally extorting money out of the country? They are literally gutting this country. They're gutting it to the bone. They're literally just stripping it of all the infrastructure. They're stripping it of all the potential that we had in 1994. What would you tell Nelson Mandela? What would you tell? If you had an opportunity to write a letter to Nelson Mandela today, June 2026, 50th anniversary of the uprising in Soweto, what would you tell those young people who died for freedom? What would you tell those young people who had a reason to get out and protest and make sure that they can fight for this country to be free? What did you tell those people today, looking at the crime and unemployment that we have in the country right now? What would you tell them? Because the first thing I'll tell Nelson Mandela is, Tata, the people that you left in charge have abandoned the country. The people that you left in charge in this country are now driving around in German SUVs that have protection. They've got VIP protection, that they are living large, they're staying in mansions, and they've neglected the black majority that voted for them. The people that you left in charge are now part of a criminal syndicate. They are smuggling drugs, they are trafficking people, they are allowing our borders to be porous so that they can run their illicit products businesses. The people that you left in charge are walking around like queens and kings. They walk around while poor people in this country are sitting in townships where the water is inconsistent, the electricity is unpredictable, the roads are full of potholes, and there is no service delivery. Even the quality of education that you left with us is no longer worth the paper that it's written on. The people that you left in charge to run this country are now behaving like celebrities. They're the ones who attend the parties wearing Gucci's and Louis Vuittons and walking around looking beautiful, while the majority of this country are starving. The young people of this country are now having to deal with the issue of sitting at home 4, 5, 10 years until they give up looking for work. And by the time they find any form of opportunity, those degrees and diplomas are sitting in the obsolete. Nelson Mandela, the people that you left in charge are no longer interested in fixing the country. The cities that you left, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, they've been turned into slums. Those cities are now, there's sewage running down the road. As we speak, you will not be able to drive into Joburg CBD at night. You will not take your best friend to go look around and sit at a park in Joburg because it has been turned into a slum. It has been turned into a horror show. And to the young people of 1976, what you fought for has been turned into a business opportunity by tenderpreneurs. What you fought for, the politicians that have taken over the government are focused on enriching themselves and their families as opposed to providing services to the people of this country. And to your surprise, Nelson Mandela, the people that you left in charge have actually installed more racial laws than the ones that you found in 1994. They've come up with a thing called BEE, Nelson Mandela. They've come up with a thing called Black Economic Empowerment. But let me tell you something about this BEE, Nelson. That this BEE has got nothing to do with black people in this country. This BEE has to do with a group of people, a very few people that have made themselves billions of rands. These people have enriched themselves. They own shares in all sorts of companies. They do all sorts of things with that money, and they are doing all sorts of fraud and tenders and contracts that are costing this country and dragging this country down. That's what has happened since 1994. And to the youth of 1976, what you fought for between 1994 and maybe 2004, it looked like we were going somewhere. The country was on a path to win, was on a path to say, you know what, we're an African country, but we're not gonna fall into the stereotype of being a failed state. We're gonna make sure that we're gonna be the first African country that can get out of a situation in 1994 and literally become a better country and compete with the best countries in the world when it comes to the military, technology, anything we can compete. We were on that path, Nelson Mandela. And then what happened is the people that you left in charge became greedy. They turned municipal budgets into their own personal purses. Now these people drive around in cars, they've got mansions, they do all sorts of things. There's nepotism, they put people in positions of power that don't qualify to be there. That's what has happened since 1994, Dad. And as a South African, what has happened since 1994, the people that you left in charge, Nelson Mandela, the people that are now in charge of the government have turned this government into their own wallets. That's what has happened. The crime, as we speak right now, Tata, the crime in this country, we have the highest murder rate. We have the most unequal society in the world as we speak in 2026. So to the young people who fought for freedom in 1976, what has happened since 1994, it is the most disappointing picture you've ever seen in your life. As we speak today, the cities and the towns that were left for us in 1994 to make better and improve and get opportunities and make sure that we can build them better for our future generations, those towns have collapsed. Those towns, as we speak now, they are ghost towns. There's brothels, there's prostitution going on over there, there's drugs, there's a whole lot of things. There's hijacked buildings in Joburg, Nelson Mandela, that I'm telling you. There's hijacked buildings as we speak. That's what I would tell Nelson Mandela. And the question I want to ask you is, and let's meet in the comments about this. If you had an opportunity to address two people, one, a group of young people from 1976 who took to the streets to demand a better life, what would you tell them about the situation we face in the country now with the youth unemployment that we find ourselves in, with half of the youth not working, and the crime that we find ourselves in? And the second person is Nelson Mandela. If you had an opportunity to address Nelson Mandela today, what would you tell him as a South African? What report would you give Nelson Mandela about this idiots that he left in charge? That's what I want to say today. So let's meet in the comments and I will engage with this comment so we can talk about it, to say, what would you tell Nelson Mandela about South Africa in 2026? Anyway, until then, stay safe.